Oh, Mrs. Garcia, how do you balance it all? You're a school counselor and new homeowner, a mother of two, and grad student. You're an ander. At National University, we see the whole you. That's why we're dedicated to your professional growth through faculty mentorships and career support, so you can focus on what matters most. National University, supporting the whole you. Learn more at nu.edu.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer from the hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a tremendous podcast for you guys. In segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Steve Gardner. He does amazing work over at USA Today, taking a look at the game of baseball. He does so from more of a just traditional standpoint, but he also does a great job on the fantasy front as well. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've seen the first few weeks of the season with offense being up, some of the teams that have impressed him, and some of these specific players as well that have impressed him. One big thing about Steve is that because he does a lot with regards to fantasy baseball, he's able to help you out a little bit in terms of prop market, in terms of some of the things that he's taking a look at, and we're also going to dive in on some of the games that we are going to be seeing this weekend, / some of the series that we're going to be seeing this weekend that intrigue us. So, going to have a great chat with Steve in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to give you guys picks and analysis on every single game on the betting board for this MLB Friday as we touch them all. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM. Naming does not matter as per usual. Please just send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did get in one today as we got this in from Michael Thomas at VicMike_, and it's a good question. He asked me, how far into a season do you adjust an opinion on a team? For example, like the Texas Rangers and the Pittsburgh Pirates have gotten off to a relatively solid start, and unlike in college basketball, you don't necessarily have like any sort of a power ranking or anything like that. Like typically in a sport like football, basketball, you've got like your base power ranking and you're able to adjust that up and down. With baseball, you don't have anything as set like that, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for gauging these teams. Now, in terms of how I value like the Pittsburgh Pirates versus the Cincinnati Reds right now in the season, as opposed to when these teams squared off at the beginning part of the season, I'm a little bit more stock up on the Pittsburgh Pirates. I do think that you sort of have to be somewhere in the middle. Like, do I think that the Texas Rangers are going to win like fewer than 75 games this year? Heck no, I think that they have proven to this point that they are going to be a pretty solid team. Now, do I think that the Texas Rangers are going to win the World Series or anything like that? I think that that is way too early to be speculating on that front. I know that Steve Gardner is going to talk a lot about the Texas Rangers in segment number 2. I don't even think that the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to make the postseason, but I think we've seen enough to know that the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't quite as sorry as they have been in past years. They've got some good young pitching. It seems like they're starting to put things together, and the schedule has been very favorable to them to this point. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression. It's very much a situation-by-situation basis because there are a few teams with a losing record, like the Houston Astros. I think it's a matter of circumstance with them. The Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley injuries have been hurting them. With the LA Dodgers, they've been dealing with all sorts of pitching injuries in their own right, but I do think that you're able to take a little bit of something from what we've seen this season. I would say you don't want to be making nothing out of what we've seen right now. This is sort of, if you're taking a look on a sliding scale in terms of percentage of the season for football, this would be about 2 weeks into the NFL season is where we're at in terms of the MLB season. The first 2 weeks of the NFL season means something. It's not an end-all be-all. I feel the same way for baseball. So hopefully that answers your question. I do love it. Thank you so much for firing that one in, Michael, because I do think that it's very interesting to gauge how different folks gauge the first few weeks of the season. Now let's take a look back at everything that we did see in Major League Baseball on Thursday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, due to the recording time, because I have to do this before the Greg Peterson Experience, not able to give you too much on Padres, Diamondbacks, Mets versus Giants. We'll have a little bit of cleanup on the podcast tomorrow and just cleaning up a score that we did see yesterday. This game was going on when I was recording the podcast. The Astros were up by a count of, I believe it was 2-1 going into the bottom of the 8th inning. They put up a 6 spot after Jose Barrios actually gave a relatively good start. The Blue Jays bullpen gave up 6 runs in an inning as the Astros, they got online, winning by a count of 8-1 as Jeremy Pena was able to crank out a home run in that one. He got his third of the campaign. So a little bit of cleanup there, but on Thursday, we saw a pair of early blowouts as the Boston Red Sox took it to the Minnesota Twins, 11-5 the final. As for the Twins, you did get one home run in this one as it was home run number 1 of the season for Mr. Willie Castro, and he was able to get that off of Tanner Houck, who gave a relatively solid start, giving up 3 runs over the course of 7 innings. Caleb Horde, scoreless inning, and then Ryan Brazier from there does give up 2 runs over the course of an inning, but for Boston, pair of home runs in this one. Alex Verdugo and Yu Chang both get home run number 2 of the campaign. For Verdugo, came off of Kenta Maeda, and for Chang, came off of Orde Alcala, as Alcala, he gave up 3 runs over the course of 2 1/3 innings. And Kenta Maeda, he goes his 2 innings, giving up that solo home run. He takes the loss, but he really didn't have too much of a hand to play in this one. They trotted out their Emilio Pagan from there, and then this game was up Pagan as he gave up 6 runs and got 5 outs, because that's what Emilio Pagan does. From there, Giovanni Morin, 1 2/3 innings scoreless, and Castro, who had a home run a little bit earlier in the game, he had to get the final out for the Minnesota Twins. So that was far from terrific. This was terrific for the New York Yankees. They took it to the LA Angels 9-3, and they had full control of this game. They got 5 runs in the first inning. For the Angels, they did not get what they were hoping for out of Patrick Sandoval. 4 innings pitched, 5 runs allowed, 6 walks in total. From there, Tucker Davidson allows 1 run over the course of 2 innings. Jimmy Erget, he got giving up 2 runs over the course of an inning before Aaron Loop gives up a run in an inning. And for the Yankees, no home runs in this one. It was really being able to draw walks and playing small ball as they went 6 of 18 with men in scoring position. And Nestor Cortez wasn't his sharpest performance, gives up 3 runs over the course of 6 innings, but more than enough in this one as you had Wandy Peralta, Ron Medanacchio goodbye for a scoreless inning before Greg Weisert and Ian Hamilton were able to close out the game with a scoreless inning apiece. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they walked the plank to a 4-3 win. If you had the run line, this was a little bit rough as they were up 4-0 going into the 7th inning, and then the Reds were able to mount a little bit of a rally, and for Luke Weaver, was just a disastrous start for him in this one. He gives up 4 runs in the first inning. From there, actually calmed down as he allows 4 runs in total and was able to complete 6 innings, punching out 8 as going deep off of him. Jack Swazniski, he was able to get home run number 5 of the season, and Connor Joe, he made things go with his 2nd of the campaign, but Alonso Contreras, very good start for Pittsburgh. 1 run surrendered in 6 2/3 innings. Robert Stevenson gets it out of the bullpen. Colin Olderman, who's been sought out of the bullpen, he had his hiccup in this one, giving up 2 runs over the course of an inning before David Benar was able to give a scoreless 9th inning. The Colorado Rockies are able to take it to the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I do have to record this a little bit in advance. They're going into the bottom of the 9th inning, but looks like the Phillies are either going to get blanked or they might get one, I guess you could call it token run in this one, but Rockies are going to get it done behind CJ Cron getting his 5th home run of the season, and Matt Strand was probably left out there a little bit too long, but he was able to punch out 11, went 5 1/3 innings, giving up that home run, gave up 3 runs in total as a pair of those came in the 6th inning as you did have Andrew Bellotti come out of the bullpen. He gave up a run in 2/3 of an inning. The Phillies went to Luis Ortiz for 2 innings. He allowed a run, and Connor Brogdon, he went for a scoreless inning, but going into the bottom of the 9th, Phillies just 5 hits, been unable to get anything generated. And for the Colorado Rockies, a team that was on an almighty, I believe, 7-game losing streak, looks like they're going to be able to get off the mat, and they're going to be able to get this one done. And then the LA Dodgers, early on in their game, they've got an early lead over the Chicago Cubs. Going to have a little bit of cleanup on this one as game was delayed by at minimum an hour due to a rain delay, but the big news in this one was the fact that the Chicago Cubs, they were looking to Jameson Taillon for the start. Javier Assad had to make a late start as he went to the injured list prior to this one, and already in this game, Max Muncy, home run number 8 of the season. We shall see what happens there, but right now, if you're taking a look at Major League Baseball, we've seen a little bit more of a comeback to the unders. You figured that bookmakers were going to be making a little bit of a change. If you look at the last 7 days in Major League Baseball, 44 unders and 42 overs, few games pending from Thursday, but we've been seeing more unders than overs over the last 7 days. Favorites, they've been able to do a very solid job on the money line in this time span, 52 and 38 straight up. Of those 52 favorites, just 10 of them were 1-run winners, so 42 out of the 52 were able to cover the run line, and if you take a look overall this Major League Baseball season, favorites are 172 and 107, so hitting at a 61.6% clip on the money line, and among these favorites, all but 38 have been able to cover the run line, winning by multiple runs, and overall this season, 144 overs to 125 unders. So that's what we're seeing in Major League Baseball right now, and that's what we all got in Major League Baseball on Thursday. Now let's turn it forward to what we're going to be seeing this weekend and take a look at teams that have started hot and cold this season with our good friend Steve Gardner of USA Today. That is up next right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Are you ready to become a winning sports bettor? Schedule a call with SBIA to find out how their service can make you a long-term winning player. They've developed an innovative algorithm that maximizes units returned, and they are so confident in their system that they offer a money-back guarantee. Sign up by October 31st and get their MBA package at no cost until they reach 10 net units. They treat sports betting like a business. So if you want to learn how to make your sports betting dreams a reality, visit them at SBIA1.com and check them out on social media at SBIA Sports.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball, this is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is great to be joined by this guest as Steve Gardner does an amazing job taking a look at the great game of baseball over at USA Today. Does a great job on a wide variety of fronts, especially if you are someone that takes a look at fantasy baseball. He is an ace taking a look at all things fantasy baseball, which, as we know, that leads into the prop betting market as well. And Steve does an amazing job with all of his work over on his Twitter handle at Steve A. Gardner all together. And Steve, great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Glad to be with you.
Glad to have you aboard. And Steve, what have you made out of the first, we're going to call it 3 weeks of the season as this uploads? We've got about 3 weeks worth of data, but I just think that it's been very interesting to gauge the start of the season because with the rule changes, we were figuring that scoring was going to be up. I'm not sure if I saw scoring being quite as up as it is, and I feel like there's a wide variety of factors in it, and it includes a little bit more than just the shift and the pitch clock. It feels like there's been a lot that has played into just some high-scoring games to begin the season.
Well, it has, and I think we still haven't figured out what kind of baseball that we have. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years, the changes in the baseball and the different types of baseballs that we've had, some that have been restricted flights, some that have been rabbit balls, and some that have been in between. It looks like this year's baseball and the results that we've seen with exit velocities and everything else, we're seeing a livelier ball. And, you know, it may be a product of the weather being a little bit warmer than it has been in previous Aprils. But yeah, whatever the factors are, and maybe we'll be able to tease some of these out as we get further into the season, offense is up across the board, and games are being played a lot more quickly. Whether that's taking its toll on the pitchers and they're giving up more hits and more home runs and everything, that will be an interesting thing to track as we go forward.
I do think that it is going to be something very interesting to track, and in terms of teams that have been able to utilize this very well, how do you think that this has affected some of these teams? Because we take a look at hot starts from teams like the Milwaukee Brewers, the Tampa Bay Rays, and I think that early on the season, typically we see it a little bit more towards the latter part of the season, but I think that pitching depth has really been rewarded for a lot of these teams in the first 3 or so weeks of the season.
Yeah, you talk about the Rays, and everything has worked well for them. I mean, even with the fact that Jeffrey Springs is probably going to be out for a while, he was off to a fantastic start, but yet the Rays have the best offense in Major League Baseball in terms of scoring runs, and by a lot, too. They're averaging more than 1 run per game, more than the second highest team in the Texas Rangers. And then not only that, they've got the best pitching in baseball. They've allowed the fewest runs per game in baseball. Yeah, things have been going exceptionally well. And you would think one of the things that MLB was talking about in terms of the changes in the rules to eliminate the shift, which the Rays were very analytically minded and were one of the best teams at taking advantage of this. There was a thought that maybe it would bring the Rays a little bit back to the pack. It's had the opposite effect. It's really interesting to see this data that we have in the first 3 weeks of the season, as you said, Greg. Whether it will hold up, obviously, once the teams get to play a more representative schedule, because the Rays have had a pretty easy one so far. But at least the Rays are jumping off the page in terms of everything that they're doing so far.
Absolutely incredible to take a look at. And what I think has been most surprising as well has been the offense of the Tampa Bay Rays, because they were 25th in terms of home runs last season. They've really been able to pick it up what do you think is real / not real about the Tampa Bay Rays run? Because I don't think that the Rays are going to be hitting like 350 homers like they're on pace to do right now, win like north of 110 games or anything like that. And as we know, the injuries, they're taking a toll on them. You feel really bad for Jeffrey Springs that he's going to be missing the remainder of the season. But with the Tampa Bay Rays, they've dealt with so many injuries in the past. They were already dealing with injuries, but they just keep trucking along, and they have found more offense now than I could really ever remember from the Rays.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, too, is that they've been a young team for the most part, and those guys, especially like Wander Franco, hasn't played an entire season yet as a major leaguer, but we know the talent that he has, and he's starting to show it. I think one of the things, and maybe this was a point of emphasis for the Rays in the offseason, one of the criticisms of Wander Franco was that he had too many ground balls. Same thing for Yandy Diaz. Just hit the ball into the ground. They were hitting the ball hard, but they weren't getting any lift on the ball, weren't getting that launch angle that resulted in extra base hits and home runs. Both of those guys have been excellent at doing that. Franco has 4 home runs this season already, and I think in his previous 2 years had maybe a total of 13. He's getting the ball airborne and hitting it over the fence. And Diaz leads the team with 6 home runs in the early going, and he's been able to get the ball in the air, get those extra base hits, and he's slugging close to 600. Brandon Lau, we already knew that he can hit home runs. He's doing that as well. And they're putting together these big innings, and guys are getting hits after hits after hits. It's just been phenomenal for them. Sometimes things come together, and what it will be fun to see, especially if you're a Rays fan, is if they can continue to do this, and those stats in the early going turn out to be not anomalies, and they can project that over the course of the full season.
I think that is going to be a lot of fun to take a look at in the Tampa Bay Rays team. They just keep finding a way. As joining me on the podcast, we do have Steve Gardner, who does great work over at USA Today, and no doubt about it, the Tampa Bay Rays, we thought they were going to be good this year. This sort of a start, I feel like, was a little bit of a surprise. Who's another team or two that stands out to you in terms of the surprise, whether that be to the positive or the negative? Because obviously the LA Dodgers entering into the weekend series with the Chicago Cubs sub 500, that to me is a little bit of a surprise. Meanwhile, in the NL as well, a team that they're going to be facing off against the Cubs, they and the Milwaukee Brewers out in the Central, they've been a big surprise to me to the positive. What has really been standing out to you?
Well, I'll tell you one team, the Texas Rangers have been a real surprise to me. We talk about how great the Rays offense has been. The Rangers have the second best offense in all of Major League Baseball. And that's even without, for the last week, Corey Seager, who was pretty much their best hitter in the early going. He's injured and he's going to be out for a month. The Rangers are just clobbering the ball. And I think that's one of the things, they're one of 2 teams. Like I said, the Rays scored the most. They have over 100 runs scored, and they're super in their run differential, plus 43, except for Tampa Bay again, among the best in the majors, if not second best. The Rangers have been able to do it all. They've been winning at home. They've been winning on the road. I think the Houston Astros have been a disappointment. They're under 500 after ruling this division for the last several years. So in the American League West, you have both a big surprise and a big disappointment right there.
The AL West has been interesting, and the Mariners have been a little bit to the negative as well. They've been dealing with some injuries in their bullpen and Andres Munoz, so we'll see if they're going to be able to pick it up as well. But they're a team that I'm very fascinated to see. And something else I'm going to be very fascinated to see is the weekend series that we're going to get between the Blue Jays and the New York Yankees. Because from my side of things with the New York Yankees, everyone always says, oh, it's a bandbox ballpark. It's just a whole bunch of runs. Nobody does anything but hit home runs. But we've seen a lot of low-scoring games thus far this season in New York, other than when Johnny Brito gives up 9 runs in the first inning against the Minnesota Twins. That was a little bit of an outlier. I don't care when you're taking a look at Yankee Stadium, but I've been really impressed by the way that the Yankees have been able to get the job done in lower scoring games. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, they've created a ton of offense without necessarily a ton of home runs. And I think that this is going to be a great series between 2 teams that I could see reaching their peak offensively, but seem to be also much improved with their pitching.
Yeah, these are 2 teams that are going to be part of the playoff chase for sure. And Greg, you made a great point. The Yankees offense, if you look at the league average right now, and teams are scoring an average of about 4.5, 4.6 runs per game, the Yankees are below that. When was the last time, especially with Aaron Judge and everything that he was doing, when was the last time the Yankees have had a below average offense? It's been the pitching for them. They're allowing a little over 3 runs per game. ERA as a team is 3.10, 4th in the majors. This is a Yankee team, and Garrett Cole obviously leading the way with the outstanding season he's had in his first 4 starts. But from the starting pitching through the bullpen, the pitching has really been what's keeping the Yankees afloat right now. That's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, it has been really interesting, and I'm going to be very fascinated to see if they're going to be able to continue that moving forward. As shown to me on the podcast, we do have Steve Gardner of USA Today, and Steve, I know you do a tremendous job when it comes to fantasy baseball. Who are a few guys that you've taken a look at this year that you feel like have been relatively undervalued, and maybe they're available, maybe you're able to play them at daily fantasy, what have you, that you think have still quite a bit of value, and maybe folks have not been able to catch up with them because there have been quite a few nice surprises this year. We mentioned some of the pitching of like the Blue Jays and the Yankees, but I do feel like there's been some really fascinating guys that we weren't expecting to have big starts of the year that have been able to come to the forefront.
And I think Matt Chapman of the Blue Jays has probably been the biggest surprise, at least to me, in terms of what he's been able to do so far this season. You know, the Blue Jays offense is very potent, but you get past Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero and those guys, and Matt Chapman has been pretty much driving the entire force there, hitting over 400. It's not a fluke at all. You look at the hard hit metrics. Matt Chapman leads the majors so far this season in hard hit percentage. 60% of all of his balls in play have been hit hard, and that's like 95 miles per hour plus. He's deserved all of that. You think about third base, he doesn't really come to mind at the top of the list of great third basemen, at least in terms of offense. Certainly Matt Chapman has been one of those guys that has really gotten off to a very fine start. In terms of guys that are maybe a little bit under the radar, Patrick Wisdom of the Chicago Cubs has been a guy that was on waiver wires in most fantasy leagues up until this past week when he started hitting home runs. You know, I think 4 or 5 games in a row having home runs. Now we're saying, okay, this guy is not, I mean, he does have a lot of swing and miss in his game, as does Matt Chapman, but right now he's putting good wood on the ball and is bringing a lot of fantasy value.
Good point on Matt Chapman. I don't know if he's going to be able to sustain north of a 400 batting average like he's done the beginning part of the season, but he's been a lot of fun to take a look at. And Steve, is there a weekend series or two that you're really going to be looking forward to? Because we highlighted the Yankees versus Blue Jays. I do think that that is going to be a rock solid one, but I do think that there's a lot of great baseball being played. Anything in particular that you're going to be watching for, whether that is a series or maybe it's just a player or two that you maybe have a little bit of a jury's out take on that you want to see how they perform this weekend?
You know, Greg, talking about how disappointing the Houston Astros have been, they traveled to Atlanta to take on the Braves this weekend. And I'm really going to be interested to see if maybe the Astros can start to turn things around, because the Braves are my preseason pick to win the World Series. They have not disappointed and have not changed me from that feeling so far this season. Can the Astros slow them down in the Braves ballpark? Hunter Brown, I think, is starting Friday. Framber Valdez, Saturday. Christian Javier. They've lined up with their best pitchers. Can they tame that Atlanta offense? That's going to be a fun one to watch for me.
It is going to be a fun one. And Steve, I know you do incredible work taking a look at the game of baseball. You do great work in the offseason getting prepared, and that has led to a great start to the season for so many of the people that read your columns, for yourself as well. And Steve, just want to give you the floor here. Let the people know where they're able to follow you on social media and just what's all on tap for you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Greg. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Steve A. Gardner, and you can find my work at USA Today Sports at fantasy.usatoday.com or mlb.usatoday.com. I write a lot of pieces that aren't necessarily fantasy skewed, but just about the game itself. And you can look for, if you're interested in the print copy, you can find my work in USA Today and also in USA Today Sports Weekly. And
Steve does a great job with those columns. If you pick them up, you will certainly not be disappointed, as he does a tremendous job taking a look at the great game of baseball. And every single time he joins this podcast, has great insights, much like today. A big thanks to Steve Gardner of USA Today for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Friday, as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to get Steve Gardner aboard. Does amazing work over at USA Today, taking a look at the game of baseball. And I know he does a great job on the fantasy side of things. If you are someone that plays a lot of player props, if you're someone that does day-to-day fantasy, you're in a dynasty league, what have you, he is a man that you do want to be following at Steve Gardner, as he does a tremendous job on that front. And every single time he joins this podcast, lends tremendous insights, much like today. A big thanks to Steve for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Friday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter feed at @GUnit_D1. We are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the National League games first, then the American League games, any interleague games. Those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. And in terms of breaking this down by league, it goes time order from there as well. So makes it very easy to follow up with as we start off with 951, 952 on the betting board. It is the LA Dodgers. They are on the road facing up against the Chicago Cubs as Drew Smyly goes for the Cubbies and Julio Arias is on the bump for the Dodgers. And the Dodgers between minus 150 to minus 160 favorites, anywhere between plus 140 and plus 145 is your number on the Cubs. Right now seeing one additional opener of 9.5 with regards to a total. Unders minus 120, the overs even, but most books, they're going to be hanging up a total in the AM due to the Wrigley Field wind being a little bit questionable, and right now looks like we are going to be getting quite a bit of wind in this game, so I did set my total pretty sky high at a 10.4, which means that at 10 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and at 10.5 or higher, I'm going to be taking a look at the total under, and the big reason why is take a look at the forecast, and it's going to be blowing out the wind at right around 12 or so miles per hour. You got mid to high 50s temperatures, so that mitigates things a little bit, but Drew Smyly is someone that I fear is going to be giving up quite a few deep balls this season. He has been seeing a dip in his swings and misses last few seasons. Thus far this year, has been great, has been cerebral, 4.70 ERA, 2 home runs allowed in 15 and a third innings, but take a look at what he did during the 2022 campaign, and he was allowing right around 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. Meanwhile, Julio Arias has actually had his best success on the road over the last 3 seasons, dating back to the beginning of the 2021 campaign. He's actually got an ERA that's about a half a point lower when he is on the road rather than when he is at home. He does a great job of being able to keep things within himself. He's given up 3 home runs in 23 and 2/3 innings thus far this season, but he's done a great job only allowing 3 walks, so command is there, and the Dodgers, they do back him up with a better bullpen. For the Cubs, they do get Brandon Hughes back in the fold. That does help them out, but Javier Assad had to start yesterday. That means that they had to stretch into their bullpen a little bit more. Mark Leiter Jr., Brad Boxberger, Michael Fulmer, they're all fine. They're not great. They're not terrible. And for the Dodgers, last year they had the top bullpen ERA in the National League. That's fallen off a little bit this year, but I think that they're going to be able to pick it back up. Guys like Evan Phillips, Alex Vesia, Yancy Almonte, Caleb Ferguson all had a sub 3.3 ERA last season. Bruce Sarter Gratterall, honestly, it's not been as impressive last season, and right around about a 3.25 ERA. I think that'll be hovering somewhere in that range this season. Phil Bickford has been a little bit hit or miss, but for the LA Dodgers, I do think that they are going to be able to have some opportunities with the deep ball, with the wind blowing out in this one. You've had a lot of guys be able to crank them yardage. Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez, along James Oatman, they were all hitting at least a 274 with at least 3 home runs apiece entering into yesterday. Max Muncy not hitting for a lot of average along Trace Thompson, but both of these guys have been able to get a home run every about 9 or so at bats. These guys have been tremendous. It's really been the bottom of the fold. Guys trying to fill in for Will Smith, who's been dealing with an injury at the catcher spot. David Peralta along with Miguel Vargas. These are guys hitting below 200. Meanwhile, for the Chicago Cubs, not a lot of pop outside of Patrick Wisdom. Well, I know that Steve Gardner talked about 8 home runs going into yesterday, but you had Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, C.A. Suzuki, all hitting at least a 323 entering into yesterday. Nick Madrigal, when he's gotten at bats, has installed. Eric Hosmer hasn't been terrific, but you know what, hitting at 245, he's able to give you a little bit of something, but I do think that Julio Arias is going to be on his game, and I do think that the Dodgers are going to be able to take advantage of the wind that we are going to be seeing in this one. I did set the Dodgers minus 163 on the money line. currently not a lot of places are posting up a run line. This is because of the win situation, but I'd be willing to lay up to a minus 110 on the Dodgers run line. They have won 1 or 2 games the last 2 seasons entering into yesterday by 2+ runs, so looking at minus 110 or less on that Dodgers run line, 10 or less, looking at the over 10.5 higher to the under 953, 954 on the betting board. The Pittsburgh Pirates are going to be playing those Cincinnati Reds. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and they're on to Graham Ashcraft getting the start. Meanwhile, Mitch Keller goes for the Buccos, and totals anywhere between 8.5 and 9. On the 8.5, overs between minus 110 to a minus 120. Unders between even and a minus 110. Seeing a 9 out there with the under a minus 125. The overs at plus 105. Pirates are between minus 120 to minus 130 favorites. Between plus 110 and plus 118 is your number on the Reds. And I did set the Buccos at a minus 142. I'm going to be willing to ride with them on the money line. Mitch Keller has done a great job of being able to up his swing and miss stuff, getting just under 10 strikeouts per 9 innings thus far this season. He has allowed 4 home runs in 23 2/3 innings, and for his career, giving up a little bit over 3.5 walks per 9 innings. That is a little bit testy, but he has been able to do a nice job being able to pick up some velocity on his fastball. He looks like a different pitcher. Meanwhile, Graham Ashcraft did not get a lot of strikeouts last year. He's been better with this regard this year. Now, the walks have picked up. Last year, he was giving up about 2.5 walks per 9 innings, 8 walks in 19 innings thus far this season, but up to more around 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings thus far this season. He's got a sub-2 ERA. I do think that is going to be going upward against the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup that I don't think that they're going to sustain quite what they've done, but Brian Reynolds is right now ripping the cover off the ball. Entered into yesterday with 5 home runs, hitting well above 300. Andrew McCutchen, along with Connor Joe and Rodolfo Castro, all hitting above 300. Now, you've got some dead bats in there. Jax Wisniewski, someone like an Austin Hedges. These are guys that have been a little bit rough, but Brian Hayes is starting to pick it up. And for the Cincinnati Reds, they did not have a single guy back from last year that had more than 12 home runs, and that would be Jake Fraley, so that's a little bit of an issue. TJ Friedel, though, along Spencer Steer, Jonathan India, all these guys are hitting at least at 280. Now, the bottom of the fold, guys like a Nick Senzel, Jose Barrero, Jason Vossler, they're just not hitting above a 230. Vossler does have 3 home runs thus far this season, but that's an issue. The Reds have had to really dive into their bullpen in recent days as well. Fernando Cruz, Alexis Diaz, and a sub-2 ERA last season, and they pick up Lucas Sims as well. He's someone I've always liked in this bullpen, but guys like Ian Gabo, Buck Farmer are not cutting it. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they've been dealing with an injury to Chase Young, David Bednar, along Colin Holderman. Haven't saw it, and they get back Robert Stevenson as well, but both of these teams not great with regards to their bullpens, but this is a little bit more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark in Pittsburgh. This is a Reds team that is not thumping at all. I do think that Ashcraft gives a good start, but I think that Keller gives a better start. I do think that Keller has a better lineup around him. I did set the Pirates at a minus 142. Going to be willing to take the money line. So I'm telling an 8.4. So whether you got an 8.5 or a 9, looking at the under to go along with the Buccos. 955, 956 on the betting board. The Colorado Rockies are on the road facing off against the Philadelphia Phillies. Aaron Nola is going to be going for the Phils, and Noah Davis on the bump for the Rockies. And the Rockies are between plus 230 and seeing as high as a plus 245. Meanwhile, with the Philadelphia Phillies, anywhere between minus 265 and minus 280 is your number. So on this game is 8.5. Overs anywhere between minus 115 to a minus 125. Unders between minus 105 and plus 105. The Phillies run line finding it anywhere between a minus 125 to a minus 130. I'm willing to go to a minus 135 on this Phillies run line. I need at least a plus 247 to take a shot on the Rockies, and it's just because you take a look at this kid in Noah Davis. He had a north of a 5 ERA with nearly 4 walks per 9 innings at the minor league level. He did have a relatively okay start against the Seattle Mariners. First time out, he didn't allow any runs, but he was in a lot of danger. Gave up 3 hits, 3 walks in 5 innings. Was very lucky that the Seattle Mariners could not hit with men in scoring position. I don't think that he's going to be so lucky against the Philadelphia Phillies team that they enter into this game currently leading the National League in terms of batting average at a 284. You've got Trey Turner, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, Umando Sosa, all hitting at least a 320. Kyle Schwarber has been leading the way with regards to home runs, and he's really the lone guy that is seeing consistent at-bats other than Jake Cave that's hitting below a 250. He's been hitting at the Mendoza line of 200, but Nick Castellanos has been able to pick it up as well. No home runs, but he's doing a good job moving the line. You take a look at this Phillies team, and each of your top 4 players in terms of total at-bats, at least a 370 on base. Meanwhile, for the Colorado Rockies, they've got the demonstrative home and road splits. They entered into yesterday as a team that, dating back to the beginning of the 2022 season, is averaging 2.99 runs per game on the road while leading the big leagues in runs per game at home. Just absolutely insane. You take a look at how they did going into yesterday on the road, and as a collective, hitting right in the neighborhood about at 217. They had CJ Cron go off for multiple home runs in game number 1 ever since then. The team has hit 5 home runs in their last 8 road games. Just can't get anyone to be able to move the line really other than Chris Bryant, who's hitting a 306 on the road. CJ Cron has been hitting about 300 on the road as well, but pretty much everyone else is hitting really, really horribly. Everyone's batting average falls by 50 points now. The Rockies bullpen, it is a little bit better when they are on the road. Guys like Daniel Bard, along with Pierce Johnson, Brad Hand, they should be able to lend a little bit of something, but it has been a rocky bullpen as well. They were dead last in terms of ERA last season. Now the Phillies, they're about a 5 team in terms of bullpen ERA as well, but I do think that Aaron Nola is someone that throughout his career has had an ERA about 0.9 points lower at home rather than on the road. Is going to be able to find it. It's been a rough start to the season for him, as he has won 21 and a third innings in his 4 starts, allowing 15 total runs, strikeouts per 9 rate below 9. He has been giving up right in the neighborhood about 2.5 to 3 walks per 9 innings, so command is still there, but I think that this is the exact confidence booster that he needs. He's not backed up by the greatest bullpen, but Jose Alvarado has been able to get a lot of swings and misses. Anthony Dominguez is starting to pick it up as well. You want to be avoiding Craig Kimbrell, but I did think that this should be Philly's domination. I did set my total at 7.3 because I do think that Nola is going to be able to lock this thing down, and I do think that in Philadelphia, you're going to be noticing that mid-April weather is taking hold with regards to Philadelphia. Plays a little bit more pitcher-friendly this time of year, so going to be taking a look at the under with the Phillies at a minus 135 or less. Willing to lay the run line as well, 957, 958 on the betting board. It is the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they play host to the San Diego Padres as Seth Lugo goes for the Pods, and Zach Gallen is on the bump for Arizona. Arizona in between minus 107 to minus 115 favorites. And between plus 102 and minus 105, your number on Slam Diego. 8.5 is the total. Over is between minus 110 and minus 115. The under is between minus 105 and minus 110. And with the San Diego Padres, I set them as a plus 138 underdog. Want to dive in on the Arizona Diamondbacks. I recognize that there's a lot of hoopla around the return of Fernando Tatis Jr., but what are you going to be able to get out of him first few games? Because with Fernando Tatis Jr. going into yesterday, he hadn't played in an MLB game since 2021, so I do have my question marks first week or so coming back for him. Now, Xander Bogaerts, he's been pulling his weight. Going into yesterday, hitting well above 325 with 4 home runs. Juan Soto had that nice home run in the game against Atlanta a few days ago, but he entered into yesterday hitting below the Mendoza line of a 200 turn. Grisham has not really been able to move the line for this team. You've got Jake Cronenworth, Ha-Sung Kim, Austin Nola, Matt Carpenter, Rougned Odor, Brandon Dixon, all hitting below a 220 for a Padres team that as a collective hitting at 223 entering into yesterday. And the bullpen hasn't been that great either. Josh Hader has been terrific, but Luis Garcia has not been himself. Very up and down. You're dealing with Nabel Crisman now being on the injury list. Steven Wilson is someone I like, but you're relying upon guys like Reese Knar and Ray Kerr for big innings, and that's not where you want to be. And for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they did upgrade their bullpen in the offseason. They bring in Andrew Chafin, Miguel Castro. They've now got Joe Mantiply back from injury. Kyle Nelson is someone I do like. And when it comes to Zach Gallen, he had a rough first 2 starts of the season, but he's back to the Zach Gallen that we all know and love. You take a look at what he did during the 2022 campaign at home. 2.49 ERA. His home runs per 9 rate was 0.6, 2.1 walks per 9 innings while getting 9 punch-outs per 9 innings in Arizona. And Arizona is a relatively tough ballpark to hit in, as Arizona was a bottom 5 team in the National League in terms of home runs per game at home. And Christian Walker off to a slow start. He and Jake McCarthy, along with Alec Thomas, entered into yesterday, hitting below the Mendoza line of 200 now. You've gotten some very surprising results from Nick Ahmed, along with Geraldo Perdomo, both hitting well above a 300 entering into yesterday. I think we're going to see that reverse a little bit, but Corbin Carroll, he's been good at stealing bases, hitting about a 294 home runs for this team. Not necessarily an Arizona Diamondbacks team that is completely thumping. Whenever you've had Evan Longoria in the fold, he's been relatively solid as well. But I do think that for Zach Gallen and company, they are going to be able to have success against the San Diego team that has been having a little bit of a difficult time getting their offense going. Now, I do think that Seth Lugo going to be able to give a solid start. He was a starter by trade many years ago. He became a long reliever for the Mets in many years, and right now he's showing that he is able to get swings and misses. 17 strikeouts in 16 2/3 innings. Has allowed 3 runs or fewer in each of his first 3 starts of the year. The Padres are 3-0 in these starts as well. He's been able to keep the walks at a relative minimum as well, right around about 2.6, 2.7 walks per 9 innings. So I do like what I've seen there. So as a result, I did set my total nice and low. I set it at a 7.7. I think the Gallen and Lugo do their part. Going to be taking a look at the under, but with the Diamondbacks, I do think that they have this game dominated. I think that the return of Fernando Tatis Jr. being overblown. Going to be taking a look at the Diamondbacks on the money line and the under. 959, 960 on the betting board. It is the New York Mets. They had the road to face off against the San Francisco Giants. Anthony DeSclafani is going to be going for the Giants, and it's old to be determined who's going to be on the bump for the New York Mets. This is a game that's off the board. Right now, I'm projecting as if we are going to be getting Joey Lucchesi, and if we do get Joey Lucchesi, I would be willing to set the Giants as a minus 123 favorite. This was on the board a little bit before, and we were seeing the Giants between minus 115 to minus 120, between minus 105 and plus 110, your price on the Mets, with the total anywhere between 8.5 and 9. On the 8.5, over was minus 120, under was even. On the 9, under was minus 115, and the over was even. And at these numbers, would be looking at a 9 under. So I might tell it at 8.7, and would be taking a look at the Giants because DeSclafani has been absolutely tremendous for the Giants. Now, if it is someone like Jose Buto that goes for the Mets, I'd probably downgrade them a little bit, but would probably be sticking with this minus 123 price for the most part, as DeSclafani, getting back to him, he has been tremendous, giving up 4 runs, 3 of which were earned in 19 innings thus far this season, has not allowed a single walk, just 1 home run, so he has done his part. Meanwhile, for Joey Lucchesi, he's looked very good at the minor league level thus far this season. The big thing with Lucchesi is you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him just time and time again, because he has had many opportunities at the big league level. He just has never really been able to put it together. It's been a very strange and just sort of sad story, to say the least, as he's been up, he's been down, he's been able to do an okay job with regards to command from time to time. You just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him. He's been called up to the big leagues like 4 times, and we've seen like 4 different forms of Joey Lucchesi. And for the Mets, entering into yesterday, they were hitting as a collective just a 227. We've seen a lot of early season struggles from this team, as Eduardo Escobar entered into yesterday, hitting a $120 along Thomas Nido, Starling Marte, Mark Hanna, Francisco Lindor, all below 235 as well. Jeff McNeil, 375 on base, but hitting just a 242. Offense has been really reliant upon Pete Alonso, 8 home runs, hitting for about a 275 going into the yesterday, team at 20 home runs in total. And for the Mets, it is a little bit more of a makeshift bullpen because you do have Edwin Diaz out of the fold for the season. They've done a good job of being able to put it together. Brooks Raley, David Robertson, pair of guys I like. Adam Ottavino's getting up there, but he's relatively solid as well. And for the Giants, they entered into yesterday 25th in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Now, I do like Scott Alexander. He had a sub-3 ERA last season, along with Camilo Duvall, so both of these guys are able to do a solid job of holding down the forward end. I do think that for the Giants, they are going to be able to utilize their nice platoon splits, as for the Giants, you've got so many guys that are able to crank a yard for you going into yesterday. You had a trio of guys, J.D. Davis, Mike Yastrzemski, along with Michael Conforto, all 4 home runs, AVVR, Theory Estrada, 3 home runs apiece. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of balance power, for lack of a better term, for the Giants. They don't do the best job of being able to move the line, though. Theory Estrada, J.D. Davis, both hitting above 300 going yesterday, along with Wilmer Flores, but that's how you've got a lot of guys that they don't move the line, and as we know, it is a pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in San Francisco. So, assuming that we get Joey Lucchesi against Anthony DeSclafani, want to lay up to a minus 122 with the Giants, and at the 9, like I'm seeing currently at DraftKings on this one, we'll be looking under 8.5 or less. That would be my buy point on the over. 961, 962 on the betting board. It is the Chicago White Sox on the road going up against the Tampa Bay Rays. Kelvin Fletcher is going to be going for the Rays, and Michael Kopech is on the bump for the Southsiders, the White Sox, between plus 135 and plus 148 underdogs. And between minus 155 and minus 162 on the Rays. 8.5 is the total. Unders between minus 110 to a minus 120, and the over that is anywhere between even money and minus 110. And set the Rays as a minus 176 favorite. Question now becomes, what is the run line? And we are getting a nice plus price, which I am going to be taking, as I'm seeing right around a plus 135 across the board. I was pretty much willing to take this as long as I was getting darn near any sort of a plus price. I set it more around a plus 105. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, currently the number 1 bullpen ERA in the American League, and they've done a very good job of being able to bank a lot of their more critical guys, like Pete Fairbanks, Jason Adam, these guys that you're going to need down the stretch in this game. That is absolutely massive, as they're trying to mix and match. The injury to Jeffrey Springs, they've been dealing with Tyler Glass now being out of the fold. You're able to go down the list. That has taken it out of them, but they just seem to find pitching out of every single crevice of the face of planet Earth, and it's always consistent and it's always good. Meanwhile, with Michael Kopech, he's just giving up a lot of hard contact in general. 7 home runs in 15 and 2/3 innings thus far this season. I don't think that he's going to have a home runs per 9 rate of 4 this season, but he did have his struggles on the road last season. Last season, he was giving up right around 1.25 home runs per 9 innings on the road. His swing and miss stuff has really went down since he's been at the big league level, and he gets a little bit loose with regards to command. Over the last 2 seasons, a little bit north of 4.5 walks per 9 innings. Meanwhile, for Mr. Fletcher, in the first real start that he was able to get 2 2/3 innings, allowed 1 run against the Toronto Blue Jays. Got to think that this is going to be a 3, maybe 4 inning outing for him, but he's backed up by a Tampa Bay Rays lineup that is currently number 1 in the big leagues in terms of runs scored, number 1 in the big leagues in terms of home runs. We were talking about it quite a bit with our good friend Steve Gardner. You've got all these guys for the Tampa Bay Rays that have been able to light it up. Really, aside from Manuel Margot, is going to be able to pick it up. Everyone that is seeing consistent at-bats, hitting at least at 250 for this team. Isaac Paredes is hitting at 233 as well, but I mean, these guys have all been able to deliver, and I think that you currently have 10 different guys with at least 3 home runs, as you've got Harold Ramirez, Isaac Paredes, Christian Bethancourt, Taylor Walsh, Luke Raley, Josh Lowe, Wander Franco, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, all with at least 3 home runs. It's just absolutely insane. And for the Chicago White Sox, it has been all about Luis Robert. He's been able to give the team 5 home runs, hitting about a 265 as a collective. The White Sox enter into the series hitting about a 251. Has got a lot of guys that are moving the line. Yes, Bonnie Grandal, Andrew Vaughn, Andrew Benintendi, in between about a 260 to 275. Jake Berger has had a home run in 4 out of his last 6 games, so he's been able to do a nice job holding down the fort. Tim Anderson has been a little bit banged up, though, so that has been hurting the team. And for the White Sox, dead last in terms of bullpen ERA. I do think that they're going to be better moving forward with guys like Reynaldo Lopez, Aaron Bummer, Jimmy Lambert, guys that had a sub-3.5 ERA last season, but Jake Diekman looks washed at this point. They're relying upon Gregory Santos for innings as well. I do think that the Rays should be able to have quite a bit of success, and I do think that they're going to be able to hold down this White Sox lineup as well. The White Sox have been a disaster with hitting with men in scoring position, so going to be looking at this Rays run line. Did set my total at 8.3. I think that Kopech is going to be able to do a little bit of a better job keeping the ball in the yard. I do think that there's a bit of regression coming for this Rays lineup as well, so I'm going to be taking a look at the under and looking at the Rays on the run line. 963, 964 on the betting board. It is the Toronto Blue Jays. They hit the road face-off against the New York Yankees. Domingo Edman is going to be going for the Yankees, and Yusei Kikuchi is on the bump for Toronto, and Toronto is a underdog of anywhere between plus 105 to a plus 113. Meanwhile, you've got anywhere between minus 115 to a minus 130 on the Yankees side as your total. Over is between minus 110 and minus 115. The under, that is anywhere between minus 105 and minus 110. And this is going to be a spot where I'm going to be back in the New York Yankees. Hopefully Domingo Edman is not utilizing any, shall we say, interesting substances, and I do think that that is going to be cracked down upon, but with the Yankees, I did set them at a minus 134. Yusei Kikuchi does look like a little bit of a different pitcher this year. He looked good in spring training. He's been able to, at the very least, give a decent performance out there on the mound in terms of command. He's down to 3 walks over his first 15 and a third innings last year. He's given up darn near 5 walks per 9 innings, but still giving up that hard contact. He's allowed 5 home runs thus far this season. Now, I do think that that is a little bit of an anomaly, but I do think that Yusei Kikuchi is leaving the ball a little bit too much in the zone because he was having a big-time issue with regards to walks last season. And for Domingo Edman, his swing and miss stuff is back. Last year, he had fewer than 7 strikeouts per 9 innings. He was coming off of some major injury, 19 punch-outs in his first 14 innings thus far this season. Had a rough outing first time around against the Philadelphia Phillies. Ever since then, he has allowed 2 earned runs in his last 9 2/3 innings across his last 2 starts. So that is something that you'd like to see, and the Yankees back him up with one of the best bullpens in the big leagues. Jimmy Cordero has been able to give you good innings. Albert Abreu has yet to allow a run. Ron Marinaccio, Wandy Peralta, they've all been good. Really, the lone question mark that you've got with the team is Clay Holmes. And for the Blue Jays, they've got a good bullpen as well. Anthony Bass, it seems like he's got butterfingers with all the popcorn that has been going on in his life. But that said, you've got Yimi Garcia along with Jordan Romano, guys like this that have been able to do a nice job holding down the fort. And Simber is something I do like as well. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, they haven't necessarily cranked out the deep ball a lot this season. They're just hitting for a really good average. This Blue Jays team entered us into the series, hitting about a 263 as a collective. We were talking about Matt Chapman with our good friend Steve Gardner. He, Kevin Kiermaier, Bo Bichette, along with Liger Jr., all hitting at least a 315 with Merrifield hitting a 314. Now, I do think that Kiermaier is going to see some regression with those numbers, and I do think that you're going to see a little bit more power out of some of these Blue Jays bats, like Liger Jr., just 3 home runs thus far this season. That should be going upward. Alejandro Kirk has had a little bit of a slow start to the season, but still a 370 on base. Yankees just have been thumping it a little bit more, though. You got Aaron Judge, who entered in yesterday with 6 home runs, hitting about a 275 Anthony Rizzo has been able to hit above a 300. Giancarlo Stanton dealing with injury once again. Shock, surprise, surprise. But Yankees, that is nothing new to them. They still have guys that are able to move the line like Oswaldo Peraza. He's been able to hit about a 280. So I do think that the Yankees are in relatively good shape there. And for me, it's just a little bit difficult for me to be able to trust in Yusei Kikuchi in this spot. So I did set the Yankees more around a minus 134. I'm going to be willing to dive in on the Yankees money line. I do think that Bill Home Run, along with Yusei Kikuchi, have taken some strides forward this year as well. This is a total that's a little bit too low, semi-total at 9.3, so a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at the 9 over and the Yankees money line. 965, 966 on the betting board. The Detroit Tigers hit the road to face off against the Baltimore Orioles as Tyler Wells hopes to pitch. Wells for the Orioles, and Michael Lorenzen is on the bump for the Detroit Tigers. So your total on this game is 8.5. The over is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 120. The under is anywhere between even and minus 110. If you're looking at the money line of the Detroit Tigers, you're going to be getting it between plus 155 and plus 162. Meanwhile, with the Orioles, you're going to be finding them anywhere between about a minus 170 to a minus 180. And if you're looking to dive in on that Orioles run line, find that anywhere between a plus 115 to a plus 120. And that is where I'm seeing the value on the run line of the Orioles as I set them more on a minus 189 money line. But I was willing to lay more like a minus 110 on this run line. With Tyler Wells, I recognize that he's not going to light the world on fire and has been relatively worse when he has been at home rather than on the road. His road ERA over the last 2 seasons is hovering in the neighborhood of 3. Meanwhile, his home ERA is a little bit north of 5, which I find to be very intriguing. But at the same time, I do think that he is going to be able to hold down a Detroit Tigers lineup that has just been a disaster. As you take a look at the Detroit Tigers, and they're currently hitting at 218 as a collective. They did get a walk-off home run from Kerry Carpenter in that double dip against the Cleveland Guardians a couple days ago, but this team is really lacking a lot of power. 14 home runs in their first 17 games of the season. Riley Green has been able to move the line a little bit, hitting at 245, but among players that I've given you at least 30 at-bats thus far this season, you've got one guy with north of a 300 on base in Kerry Carpenter, and you got Miguel Cabrera, who's very long in the tooth. He's really not seeing a lot of at-bats at all this season. When he is out there, he's a liability for this team. It's just really bad, and for the Tigers, at the very least, they could bank on a rock-solid bullpen a season ago, as the likes of Andrew Chafin, Michael Fulmer, Gregory Soto are now out of the fold for this bullpen. You do still have Jose Cicerno, who had a sub-3 ERA last season. Alex Lang was able to see some innings a season ago as well, but relying upon these guys along with someone like a Tyler Alexander, not necessarily great. And for Michael Lorenzen, he started out much of his career as a bullpen piece with the Cincinnati Reds, was able to see some starts last season, but you tell that he had his very obvious struggles. He was giving up north of 4 walks per 9 innings whenever he had to perform on the road for the Angels last year at a 5.69 ERA. This is going to be a big-time issue for him, as his home runs per 9 honestly wasn't terrible. He gave up about 1 home run per 9 innings, but instead of 224 off of him, but he's got no command whatsoever. Now he has to go up against an Orioles lineup that is one of the best in the big leagues. We saw the 9 RBI game about a week and a half ago from Ryan Mountcastle. He started out the year hitting 6 home runs, not hitting for a lot of average, but you know who is? Jorge Mateo, Adley Rutschman, Austin the Sayers kid, all hitting at least a 300 right now. And with the new rule changes, the stolen bases are very big for this team as well. Cedric Mullins and Jorge Mateo combined 17 stolen bases for these two guys. Now the Orioles bullpen, much like the Tigers bullpen, not quite what it was a season ago, as they did lose Jorge Lopez at the trade deadline last season, but you still have guys like a Felix Bautista in there. Keegan Aiken is not quite what he was a season ago, and I did expect a little bit of regression out of CNL Perez, but Danny Columbia I thought was a good addition from the Minnesota Twins. Mike Baumann has been able to lock things down as well, and I just don't think that Michael Lorenzen is going to be able to give you a whole heck of a lot, as gave up 6 runs across 4 innings in his first start. As always, like command, Tyler Wells, he is a little bit of a shaky pitcher in his own right, but also going up against the Detroit Tigers team as one of the worst lineups in all of baseball. I do think that the Orioles should be able to pull it out, and I do think that you are going to see a little bit of a lower scoring game. I do think that Wells is going to be able to shut down, once again, a very bad Detroit Tigers team in terms of offense. I set my total at 8.4, so here at an 8.5, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to dive in on this run line of the Orioles. 967, 968 on the betting board. The Oakland A's hit the road face-off against the Walker Texas Rangers, as 55 Shades of John Gray is going to be going for Texas, and JP Sears is on the bump for the A's, and the A's are an underdog between plus 175 and plus 180, anywhere between minus 195 and minus 205 is your number on the Rangers. Your total on this game is between 8 and 8.5. On the 8, over is minus 120. The unders even on the 8.5. Unders between minus 115 and minus 120. The overs anywhere between even and minus 105. If you're looking at the Rangers run line, by the way, find that anywhere between even money and minus 105. And I was willing to go up to about a minus 120 to a minus 125 on this run line of the Rangers. That's where I'm seeing a lot of value. I set this money line at a minus 225, and I do think that Jon Gray is going to be able to go out and dominate. Ever since he has gotten to Texas, he's been able to do a nice job mowing them down with a little bit over 10 punch-outs per 9 innings. Walks have been a little bit shaky this year, north of 4 walks per 9 innings. Even last year, he did have a little bit north of 3 walks per 9 innings, but he has pitched very well in Texas since arriving. He has been able to post up right around a 3.15 ERA and goes up against someone in JP Sears that he's been able to improve his swing and miss stuff a little bit this year. 12 punch-outs in 15 and 2/3 innings last season. He was only getting right around 6.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Doesn't really walk a lot of guys. Right around 2.5 walks per 9 innings a season ago, but he has given up 5 home runs in 15 and 2/3 innings, and we mentioned it with Steve Gardner. The Texas Rangers team has looked tremendous to be able to start out the season. As for the Texas Rangers, you do have a bunch that has been sort of makeshift in terms of the lineup, but Marcus Semien has really been able to find it. 3 home runs in the past week, now hitting nearly a 300. Josh Young has been able to hit about a 285 for the team, and then you've got Jonah Heim hitting above a 300. So even without Seager, guys are finding a way to be able to move the line. You're going to need to get something out of someone like a Travis Janikowski who stepped in the outfield. Robbie Grossman has been a little bit rough starting out, but for the Texas Rangers, they also back up Jon Gray with a really good bullpen, as Jonathan Hernandez, Jose Leclerc, Brock Burke had a sub-3 ERA last season, and going into the series, a top 5 team in terms of bullpen ERA, something I never thought I would say about the Texas Rangers. Meanwhile, the Oakland A's, they are a bottom 8 team in terms of their bullpen ERA, as Domingo Acevedo is currently out of the fold. He's dealing with an injury. That's just absolutely brutal. Danny Jimenez as well. So, yeah, Zach Jackson, same ball pair of guys with a sub-4 ERA, but now you're looking at guys like Adam Muller and company to be able to lock it down. That's not great. Now, JP Sears might honestly be their best starter at this point, but what sort of offense are they going to be able to supply to be able to help them out? You take a look at the way this Oakland A's team has been hitting on the road, and it has been absolutely putrid. As the Oakland A's, they have been able to hit as a collective about a 230 thus far this season, as Brent Rooker has been a big reason why he's been able to supply the team with 4 home runs thus far, so that has been a nice find. And you've got Esterio Ruiz, who's sitting right around 300, so you've got 2 bats that are really picking it up, but Jace Peterson, Ramon Laureano, Elemendiz Diaz, Tony Kemp, a lot of guys are consistently playing, are getting 220 or lower. And on top of that, a pair of guys I mentioned in Laureano and Rooker, they're currently dealing with injuries as well. So I did have to make a little bit of an adjustment on this total, which is why I currently have it at an 8.2 rather than more like an 8.5. We're mostly seeing 8.5s out there, and at an 8.5, willing to dive under it. And with the Rangers, I think that Jon Gray is able to go out there and dominate. Looking at the Rangers on the run line to go along with this total under 969, 970 on the betting board. The LA Angels play host to the Kansas City Royals as Taylor Clark gets the start for the Royals, and Shohei Ohtani is on the bump for the Angels. And the Halos, they are massive favorites, anywhere between minus 270 to minus 285. Meanwhile, anywhere between plus 240 and plus 245, your number on Kansas City. 8.5 is the total. The over and the under are anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 115. And on that Angels run line, you're finding it at a minus 135. Typically, I like to stay away from big demonstrative favorites like this, but I'm willing to take it with Shohei Ohtani. Set the Angels on the run line at a minus 145. I did set my money line more around about a minus 275, so I see much more value on the run line rather than the money line reduced to juice, because I do think that the Kansas City Royals are just going to have a brutal time being able to get any semblance of offense going. As for the Kansas City Royals, they're hitting a 208 as a collective this season. You do have Bobby Witt Jr., who's been able to supply 3 home runs for this team, but it's just been a very sad display. You need Salvador Perez to be able to refine what he was able to do a few seasons ago, as he was able to give the team 48 home runs 2 seasons ago, was hitting about a 275. This year he's hitting about a 236. You do have Vinny Pasquantino, who's able to hit 270. Efraimo Reyes has picked it up. He and Bobby Witt Jr. both hitting right around a 260, but you've got so many dead bats out there. Hunter Dozier, Nicky Lopez, Jackie Bradley Jr., Nate Eaton, Nick Prado. You go down the list of guys hitting below a $185, and it's just deplorable. The Royals are hoping that Josh Staumont can get back to being that normal Josh Staumont self, but he's been just really up and down the last few seasons, has been dealing with a wide variety of injuries, had north of a 6 ERA last season. Taylor Clark was expected to be a little bit of a long guy in the bullpen. Now they're having to throw him out there for starts. He has made 20 starts in his career. That was back when he was playing for the Arizona Diamondbacks a few seasons ago, but he never had success as a starter, so that's not necessarily very encouraging for Taylor Clark. He does give out quite a few walks. Guy that is going to give up quite a bit of hard contact, and he goes up against an LA Angels team that they don't have a day of rest. That is hurting them a little bit, but you've got one of the best lineups in the big leagues. Mark Trout, Shohei Ohtani, both of these guys north of a 360 on base. You know that these guys are going to end the season with 30-plus home runs. Hunter Renfroe last season with the Brewers, he had a 250 average, hit for 25-plus home runs. You do have a couple guys that they do to pick it up. Luis Renifo, Brendan Drury, Zach Neto. These are guys hitting below the Mendoza line of 200, but I do think that Taylor Ward, he's going to be able to find it. He's only hitting about a 225, but Anthony Rendon actually being healthy helps out this Angels team. And for the Angels, since the All-Star break of the 2022 campaign, they have been a top 10 team in terms of bullpen ERA. Now, I don't think that is going to be maintaining, but they do pick up Matt Moore at a sub-2 ERA last season. Carlos Estevez is someone that I still don't have any faith in whatsoever, but Andrew Wantz, Jose Quiata, they've been relatively okay in comparison to the Royals, and I think that the Royals are completely outgunned against a guy in Shohei Ohtani that we always talk about all that this guy is able to do, but you just take a look at the way that he has pitched thus far this season. 2 runs allowed in 21 innings across 4 starts. Does need to lower the walks, 13 walks in 21 innings, but we've seen it from him in past seasons where he walks a lot of guys first 3 or 4 starts of the season, walks it down from there. I think the same is going to be happening with Ohtani this season, as he's still been able to get right around 11 punch outs per 9 innings. Has been darn near unhittable as well. So did some I told at 7.7. I think that the Royals aren't going to be able to touch Ohtani and company. Going to be looking at the under, and the Angels on the run line. 971, 972 on the betting board. The Cleveland Guardians play host to the Miami Marlins. Braxton Garrett is going to be going for the fish, and Zach Plesac is on the bump for Cleveland. Cleveland anywhere between a -130 to a -135 favorite. Anywhere between +115 and +120 is your number on Miami. 8 is the total. Over is -115. The under is -105. Seeing straight 8.5 out there as well. Under is -125. The over is +105. I set the Guardians money line at -126, so we need to get down just a few more cents for me to be able to dive in. But if you are taking a look at the run line in this spot, you're finding it right around about a +155 to a +160. I would need about a +165 here. I do think that when it's all said and done, I should be able to get a nice price on the Cleveland Guardians, but as of right now, it is a little bit more wait and see mode on me. With anything above a +125, I'd be willing to dive in on the Miami Marlins. -125 or less, I'd be willing to dive in on the Cleveland Guardians. So sort of in no man's land with regards to the openers, so I will let line movement determine where I'm going to be going on this one. But with Zach Plesac, you do have your question marks with him as a starter, but you know that he is going to be able to have good command. 2 walks in 13 innings thus far this season. Last year, about 2.6 walks per 9 innings, and really since Memorial Day of last season. I'm not saying he's been amazing, but he's been able to provide an ERA that hovers right around about a 4, so I mean, he's been a relatively average pitcher, and he's still backed up by one of the best bullpens in the big leagues. Despite the fact that James Karinchak has been all over the place, you've been able to get good performance out of Nick Sandlin, Trevor Steven. Whenever you've had Aniel De Los Santos out there, he's currently injured, so that's rough, but you saw Eli Morgan. All these guys had a sub-3.5 ERA last season, and Emmanuel Clase, so one of the most lockdown closers in the big leagues, while the Miami Marlins are in the bottom half of the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, dealing with an injury of their own. And JP Chargois, AJ Puck has been able to do a nice job of being able to hold it down, as he's been a good closer and a good find for the team. But guys like Huascar Brazoban, Dylan Floro, they're not terrible, but you'd like to see a little bit more than that for this bullpen. But what's really ailing the Miami Marlins right now is that they are dead last in the National League in terms of runs per game. You do have Jorge Soler, who's been able to go deep 5 times thus far this season, and it's not that they've got the world's worst batting average. They're hitting at 249 as a collective, with Luis Arias sitting well above a 400 right now. Garrett Cooper is hitting right around 315. Brian De La Cruz is able to move the line. It's just that they're a very top-heavy lineup. You've got Nick Fortes, Avicio Garcia, Jacob Stallings, Jesus Sanchez, Garrett Hampson, guys like this hitting at 225 or lower, John Birdie as well, and that's what's killing the Marlins. The top half of the fold, they get on base and they can't drive them in. The Guardians are dealing with the same thing. They're currently dead last in the American League in terms of total home runs. You do have guys that are able to get on base. Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, Steven Kwan, Andres Jimenez, Oscar Gonzalez, Will Brandon, all at least a 270 last year for this team. That is way downward though. They're currently hitting at 231 as a collective with that limited power. They've got Josh Bell, who's supposed to be able to drive in a few more runs. He's only been able to hit a $191 thus far this season. Josh Naylor has been having his early season struggles, but it should be interesting to see how Braxton Garrett is going to be able to perform on the road. Last year, 2022, was really able to hold it in with regards to the walks. First 2 times he got called up to the big leagues was completely terrible in terms of his command. Last year, more like 2.45 walks per 9 innings while allowing just 1 home run per 9 innings, but had a 4.40 road ERA compared to a 2.63 ERA at home. And his limited sample size thus far this season has not been bad. Made 1 long relief appearance along with 2 starts, 5 runs given up in 13 1/3 innings, 2 walks. Nothing that really gets you jumping out of your seat, but at the same time has been relatively solid. So I'm going to be waiting to see where late night line movement takes this one. I'm thinking I'm probably going to get the Guardians more around a -125, in which case I'd be looking at them on the money line. And this is a total that I did set at 8.7. I do think that there's warranted question marks with both of these starters. I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to move the line a little bit more as well. So being able to get a 8 to an 8.5, I'm going to be taking a look at this total over, and with the Guardians willing to lay up to a -125 with them. Here comes my DK Nation write-up pick of 973, 974 on the betting board. The Atlanta Braves play host to the Houston Astros. Hunter Brown is going to be going for the Stros, and Bryce Elder is on the bump for the Braves, and the Braves are favorites of anywhere between -110 to -115. Anywhere between -105 plus 105 is your number on Houston. Total is 8.5. The over is -115 to -120. The under is anywhere between even and -105. I did set my total at 9.2, so even if this jumps up to a 9, I'm going to be taking a look at the over, but my write-up pick here, that is going to be on the Atlanta Braves. I felt like they should have been closer to about a -135 or so favorite. I officially slotted them in at a -137. You got a pair of young starters that have been absolutely tremendous thus far this season in Elder along with Hunter Brown. As Hunter Brown has allowed 4 runs at 18 plus innings thus far this season. Elder has allowed just 3 runs across 16 plus innings in his 3 starts. Both of these guys cancel each other out. Both of these guys give up right around 3 walks per 9 innings. Both guys between 8 to 9 punch-outs per 9 innings. I really like the upside of both of these guys, and it comes down to what's surrounding both of them, and right now the Atlanta Braves provide more support for Bryce Elder. The Braves are a top 5 team in terms of bullpen ERA. They're number 2 in the National League. They've got some aging guys in the bullpen, but they're getting the job done. Joe Jimenez, Nick Anderson, Jesse Chavez. These guys have been rock solid. Kirby Yates, he was very good a few years ago with the San Diego Padres. He's been a little bit of a reclamation project. Has been a little bit up and down to begin the season, but you know what? You've been able to have a lot of guys come out there and hold down the fort. Meanwhile, the Astros were number 1 in terms of bullpen ERA last season, and I thought that they performed a little bit above their skis. They have really come back down. They're middle of the pack this year in terms of bullpen ERA. You had Seth Martinez, Hector Neris, Brian Abreu, Rafael Montero. All these guys have career years last season, and we have seen a bit of regression there. And for the Houston Astros, they are dealing with injuries when it comes to the lineup. As Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley being out of the fold, that's rough, and that's a big reason why the Astros are currently 20th in the league in terms of home runs on a per-at-bat basis. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Braves, they are 5th in the league in terms of home runs per at-bat, and the Atlanta Braves led the National League last season in terms of total home runs. Ronald Acuna Jr. has come back to the Ronald Acuna Jr. standard. He is hitting about a 360 with 3 home runs thus far this season. Matt Olson, 385 on base, 6 bombs. Austin Riley, Sean Murphy, Ozzie Albies, they've also applied at least 4 home runs. Everyone aside from Albies, at least a 375 on base. Now, they are a little bit top heavy. You need Marcell Ozuna, Eddie Rosario, guys like this to pick it up because they're dealing with an injury of their own to Michael Harris. But for the Houston Astros, Alex Bregman having a classic Alex Bregman-like start as he's hitting about a 215. Jeremy Pena is hitting in that fold as well. So both of these guys have had their struggles. Mauricio Dubon has been hitting above a 300, but he doesn't really draw any walks. Martin Maldonado has always been a dead bat for the team. Some of the younger guys like David Hensley need to pick it up quite a bit for the team. I do like Jose Abreu. He does nothing but drive in runs, but he's got as many home runs as myself thus far this season. I do think that both of these starters in Brown and Elder are relatively equal, but the Braves right now have the better bullpen. They've got the better lineup, and that is why I'm riding with the Atlanta Braves in this spot. That is my DK Nation write-up. Atlanta on the money line. Think that they should be closer to about a -136, -137, and in terms of the total, set it just north of 9 at a 9.2. So you're at 8.5. Looking at the over right up here, Braves money line, 975, 976 on the betting board. The Milwaukee Brewers play host to the Boston Red Sox. Nick Pivetta is going to be going for the Sox, and Freddie Peralta is on the bump for Milwaukee, and the Brewers between -161 and -170 favorites, anywhere between +140 and +150 your number on Boston. 8.5 is the total. Over is -120, and the under, it is even. And With the Sox, we're a few pennies away from this being a buy point on me. I need at least a plus 155 to be able to take a shot here. And hey, if we do get down to about a minus 153, minus 154 or so, I would be willing to buy in on the Brewers. So this is another little bit of a wait and see mode. We do have the Brewers run line currently at right around about a plus 118 to a plus 120. I need at least a plus 130. So right now, much like we are finding in that Guardians versus Marlins game, I'm going to let late night line movement tell me the way here, as Nick Pivetta has been a little bit better on the road than he has been at home ever since joining the Boston Red Sox. As a matter of fact, his ERA is about 0.6 points lower when he is on the road rather than when he is at home last year at a 4.80 home ERA compared to a 4.32 ERA on the road. He just gives up fewer home runs when he's away from home. At home, he's been giving up nearly a home run and a half per 9 innings the past 2+ seasons, more like 1.2 home runs per 9 innings away from home. Now, Freddie Peralta has been just a flamethrower this year for the Milwaukee Brewers, looking like the 2021 form of himself when he had north of 11 punch-outs per 9 innings, 19 strikeouts in 17 innings. The walks are still there. You're always going to be having that with Freddie Peralta. Even when he was an all-star, he was giving out north of 3 walks per 9 innings, as far as 7 walks in 17 innings, but he's currently backed up by the top bullpen in the National League in terms of ERA. We are starting to see a little bit of regression with this. They've been dealing with some injuries, but Peter Strzelecki has been very solid, along with even Matt Bush. I know that some Brewers fans don't necessarily love Matt Bush, but these two guys have been able to hold down the fort. Hobie Milner to be able to give you some good innings, and Devin Williams right now one of the best closers in all of baseball. And with the Red Sox, they're actually in the top half of the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. I don't think that this is going to be long-lasting. You've got Kenley Jansen, and we all know that whenever you bring Kenley Jansen into the game, anything can happen. Caleb Hort, Ryan Brazier, Richard Blyer, these are not guys that I am necessarily too bullish on, but their long guy, Josh Winkowski, has actually been excellent. You had Cutter Crawford come in and save the day for them on Monday, being able to bail them out. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this Red Sox bullpen is able to maintain. But what we do know is this Boston Red Sox lineup, they are able to produce runs. They've been able to give you at least 4 runs in now 6 out of their last 7 games, as even with having on the injured list Adam Duvall, this team has been able to strike, as they've got right now Alex Verdugo moving the line at the top, hitting nearly a 340. Justin Turner down for a 355 on base. Rafael Devers has been able to supply 7 home runs. Now, it is a top-heavy team, as Masataka Yoshida, Christian Arroyo, Tristan Casas, Rob Revsnyder, Hugh Chang, Remiel Tapia. Shall we go down the list of guys hitting a 200 or lower are all there. And for the Milwaukee Brewers, this team is averaging 6 runs per game at home. You've got a lot of guys that have just been able to do a good job of moving the line. Christian Yelich has still not been himself. He's hitting just a 235, but Willie Adames, Brian Anderson, along with William Contreras are all giving you at least a 340 on base. Adames, 4 home runs thus far this season. Rowdy Tellez, 5 bombs. He's got a 330 on base. Garrett Mitchell, young guy, has been able to move the line. This team as a collective is sitting at 290 at home. I do think that there's going to be some regression with that. I do think that Nick Pivetta is going to be able to lend a relatively good start. So I did set my total at an 8.3. I think that Peralta going to do a good job of being able to tame these bats. So here at an 8.5, looking at the under, and like I said, with late line movement, gonna let it show me the way. Seeing now plus 152 out there on Boston. So if we're able to get to a plus 155 or greater, going to be willing to take the Red Sox. If we get down to minus 155 or less, want to lay it with the Milwaukee Brewers. And taking a look at the under, 977, 978 on the betting board. Washington Nationals hit the road to face off against the Minnesota Twins. Tyler Mahle is going to be going for the Twinkies, and Trevor Williams is on the bump for Washington. 8 is the total. Over and under are both at minus 110. With Minnesota, they are between minus 195 and minus 205 favorites, anywhere between plus 170 and plus 178 is your number on Washington. If you're looking at that Twins run line, finding it at a plus 105, and I was willing to lay up to a minus 112. So I'm going to be looking at this Twins run line. It's at the minus 217 on the money line. See much more value on this run line rather than the money line, because with Washington Nationals, they just have not been able to put bat to ball. They are dead last in the league in terms of home runs, as they've cranked out 8 home runs in 18 games, and 3 of them have come off the bat of Jeimer Candelaria. Now, they actually do have guys that have been able to do a nice job of being able to move the line, as you've got Victor Robles with a 375 on base, Candelaria, who I mentioned, along with Keibert Ruiz, Lane Thomas. These guys are hitting above a 260. Someone like Michael Chavis is someone I've always liked. They've been giving him some at-bats. Joey Meneses has been cold to begin the season, but with the Nationals, they just can't drive anyone in because they've got no power. And for Tyler Mahle, he's always been good when he's pitched away from Cincinnati. You take a look at his ERA in Cincinnati compared to everywhere else, and it's just absolutely insane. A perfect microcosm of this was the 2021 season when he was with the Reds. He had a 5.63 home ERA, was giving up right around 2.2 home runs per 9 innings on the road. He gave up less than a half a home run per 9 innings with a 2.30 ERA over the course of a sample size of north of 100 innings. The Minnesota Twins back him up with one of the better bullpens that you're going to find in the big leagues. Yohan Duran is able to throw 100 miles per hour. Jorge Alcala, Giovanni Morin are a pair of guys I like. Morin, a sub-3 ERA in the bullpen last season. Griffin Jax, he's able to give you multiple innings, sub-3.6 ERA last season. Jorge Lopez, he had a sub-2.5 ERA last season as well. Emilio Pagan is someone I really don't have a lot of faith in, but past that, it's a good bullpen. And for the Washington Nationals, since the All-Star break of 2022, they've had a top 10 bullpen ERA as well. Hunter Harvey, Carl Edwards Jr., Mason Thompson, Erasmo Ramirez. These are all guys that had a sub-3.5 ERA a season ago. And Trevor Williams, he's by no means terrific, and I honestly feel like he's been best as a long reliever, but you know what? He's led 3 starts thus far. He's got an ERA that's hovering right around 3.52. He's done an okay job. 3 earned runs or fewer in each out of his 3 starts. He doesn't give up a lot of walks, 3 walks in 15 innings thus far this season. You take a look at what he was able to do a season ago with the New York Mets, and he just sort of held down the fort. About 2.3 walks per 9 innings, 8.5 punch-outs per 9 innings. Not a guy that's going to wow you, but you know what? He's going to come out there and he's going to be able to give you an honest effort. And for the Minnesota Twins, they've actually gotten some production out of Joey Gallo recently. He's been able to give the team 4 home runs over the course of 26 at-bats. So far, so good out of him. I know that he's going to swing and miss a lot now that I said that, but they do need to find a little bit more offense because you do have a pair of guys in Christian Vasquez, Donovan Solano hitting above a 300. Ryan Jeffers, whenever he's been out there, he's been able to do a solid job. But got a lot of guys like Byron Buxton, who I know that he's going to be able to pick it up. Jose Mirando, Eduardo Julian, Michael A. Taylor, Carlos Correa that have all been off to slow starts, hitting at 226 or lower. I do certainly think that Correa is going to be able to pick it up. But for the Minnesota Twins, I do think that a good time to be able to pick up the offenses right now. But I think that this ballpark is going to be yielding very few runs. It's one of the more pitcher-friendly ballparks out there in baseball. I think Williams lends a relatively solid start, but I think that Tyler Mahle in this bullpen is going to be able to really just hold down a sad Washington Nationals lineup. So somebody tell us 7.8, looking at the under on 8, and I think that the Twins are going to be able to win this game by multiple runs. Willing to take the Twins on the run line to go along with this total under, and we wrap things up with 979, 980 on the betting board. The St. Louis Cardinals are on the road facing off against the Seattle Mariners. George Kirby goes for the Mariners, and Steven Matz is on the bump for St. Louis. 8 is the total. Overs between minus 115 and minus 125. Understanding between minus 105 and plus 105. Seattle's a minus 125 favorite across the board, and between plus 105 and plus 115 is your number on St. Louis. I set the Mariners more around a minus 154. I just do not believe in Steven Matz whatsoever, so I'm going to be taking a look at the Seattle Mariners on the money line. Take a look at Steven Matz, 6.48 ERA to begin the season, and for Steven Matz, he's given up at least 1.5 home runs per 9 innings in 3 out of the last 4 seasons that he has finished. He has had an ERA of at least a 4.21 in 3 out of his last 4 seasons entering into this year. He gives up a lot of hard contact. He doesn't necessarily give up a ton of walks, but he doesn't necessarily get a bunch of punch-outs either. He's just not a guy that really does anything too well. I wish I could put it any other way, but he really doesn't impress me. Now, the Cardinals back him up with a relatively solid bullpen that is starting to come around. You notice that Ryan Helsley had a rough end to the 2022 season. First 2 appearances in 2023 weren't great. He's been able to pick it up. You've got someone like Chris Stratton in the bullpen who I think can hold down the fort. Giovanni Gallegos, Genesis Cabrera, big believer in them. Meanwhile, the Seattle Mariners, they were a top 6 bullpen in terms of ERA last season, but they're dealing with some injuries right now. Andres Munoz being the most notable of them. They do have Penn Murphy and Paul Sewald, a pair of guys that were rock solid for the team last season, but they lost Eric Swanson in the offseason, so that's a big issue for them. They've had to start Chris Flexen because of the Robbie Ray injury, and typically he's a little bit more of a long guy for the team. And for the Seattle Mariners, flat out, they need to find some average. They were 3rd worst in the big leagues in terms of batting average last season, entered into the series hitting at 227 as a collective. You do have Julio Rodriguez with 4 home runs, moving the line, hitting about a 260, and Eugenio Suarez has been able to hit about a 280, just 2 home runs. You know that that's going to be picking up, but you just take a look at some of the guys towards the bottom of the fold, and you're not able to get anything out of them right now, as you've got guys like Sam Haggerty, Tommy Lascella, Jose Calabero, hopefully I said that correctly, only below the Mendoza line of 200. They pick up Colton Wong, who's hit at least a 248 in 6 straight years. He's right now hitting a 0.98. AJ Pollock has forgotten how to hit as well. You got to feel like these guys are going to be able to pick it up. Jared Kelenic has been amazing. 4 home runs, hitting a 310 thus far. Ty France, he's been able to do a good job of moving the line as well. And for the St. Louis Cardinals, this offense has not necessarily been able to live up to their billing as well. Nolan Gorman is something I like. He's been able to supply 5 home runs, hitting above a 300. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. The power numbers are not quite there, as the only guy with north of 2 home runs right now for the St. Louis Cardinals is Nolan Gorman. Now, you've got like 8 guys with 2 approximately, which I find that to be very interesting, but both of these guys moving the line. Jordan Walker, he's started out the year very hot. He, Brendan Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Tommy Edman, Tyler O'Neill, all these guys hitting between about a 269 to 276. So they're getting guys on. They're not necessarily driving them in. I do think that is going to be turning around a little bit, but I don't think that it's going to happen against George Kirby, a guy that for his career has sub 2 walks per 9 innings on his resume. As a matter of fact, sub 1.5 walks per 9 innings. His swing and miss stuff has been there for his career, about 9 punch-outs per 9 innings. He does give up the deep ball a little bit, but with this being at 7:10 p.m. Pacific time for his pitch, that's going to play very pitcher-friendly for him, and I do think that he is going to do a far better job than Steven Matz, as I did set the Seattle Mariners rather demonstratively on the money line, just as a little bit of a fade of Steven Matz. Sid set my total at 8.1, so you're at the 8, looking at the over. I'm looking at the Seattle Mariners on the money line, and that will wrap things up for the Friday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family of Podcasts. A big thanks to Steve Gardner of USA Today for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those. And first one is my Twitter timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter. As per usual, please just send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast. And that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Oh, Mrs. Garcia, how do you balance it all? You're a school counselor and new homeowner, a mother of 2, and grad student. You're an ander. At National University, we see the whole you. That's why we're dedicated to your professional growth through faculty mentorships and career support, so you can focus on what matters most. National University, supporting the whole you. Learn more at nu.edu.